What the Tech is sponsored by Hover.com. Domain names made simple. Go to gfq.hover.com and get 10% off your entire purchase. And by Stitcher Radio. Listen on the go via the Stitcher mobile app. For more information, go to stitcher.com/GFQ. Welcome everybody to What the Tech. I am Andrew Zarian. I hope I am. In this very warm studio today. So by the end of the show, I'll probably be melted all across the floor, and I'll just let Paul do the show. Hey, Paul.
Hey, how you doing?
Paul, you might have to take over by the end. Within 30 minutes, you might have to take over the entire show.
I think given the fact that it's like 80 degrees outside, it's more likely I'll be asleep.
It's March, and we're having a heat wave here on the East Coast. It's 80 degrees in my room, so it's absolutely awful. But I am in a good mood to do a show, unlike most weeks. Most weeks I'm just miserable because it's weird outside. It's New York, and you know that's just automatic to be in New York. You have to be miserable. And Paul's happy in Boston, so it's this week. I think we're both on the same page. Nobody has to run out of here at the last minute. Yep. We were early. We don't have to leave early, so we'll do a full hour. No promises though. I'm gonna try. I just took back everything that I said for the last 5 minutes. But what we do on this show, for people that are just tuning in, we don't necessarily run down the news, but we do discuss things that are happening, big news items. We might pick one story and stick to it for the entire show. But today we're going to do something different. We are going to discuss what the future of the desktop is and what it's going to be like in a post-PC world. And the reason why I'm bringing that topic up this week is I think we did the operating system thing a couple weeks ago, right, Paul? We discussed the future of the operating system. Yeah. But we didn't discuss hardware, and we didn't discuss what might happen 10 to 15 years from now, because I think it's a good time to do this because of all the Windows 8 news, which is a huge leap into the post-PC world and the tablet world, and the latest version of the iPad, that is the new iPad.
Yep.
So I thought it was an appropriate time, and a lot of people have been asking us questions, especially me on Twitter. I don't know about you, but they've been asking me on Twitter what I think about the new iPad, if I'm going to buy the new iPad, what is it going to be like when Windows 8 comes out for the tablet, how are they going to compete, what's going to happen to the market in that sense.
Right.
It's a very interesting time. I mean, are you going to get a new iPad before I go into it?
Yeah.
You are? Okay. Did you order it?
Yes, I did.
I have not.
Yeah, so you could do the morning thing, get up on Friday early and stand in line. I did that for the iPad 2 and didn't end up getting the iPad I wanted, right? I wanted to get the one with...
What did you want?
I wanted 3G.
Oh, and you got Wi-Fi.
And I believe the guy right in front of me got the last one.
Oh, what a jerk.
So I ended up getting a 32 gig version without 3G, which I've always sort of, kind of regretted because, the iPad has that nice pay-as-you-go capability with 3G, which is what I'm looking for. You could buy a MiFi device from AT&T and pay $50 a month for 5 gigs of storage, but I mean, how nice would it be to, just pay for that when you need it, not, every single month. So,
yeah, no, I'm going to skip out on this one. I mean, the Retina is great, the resolution is great, the graphics chip is really good in that thing, but it's not that much of a change for me to say, you know what, I need to get this one. I think for first-generation iPad owners, it's a good leap. Yeah. But
right. So, but that's how Apple does things. I mean, very common sense. Very and kind of an evolutionary, pragmatic way of doing that, and I think that's smart.
I got a message from someone because we did the coverage here, and I got an email from someone saying, I don't know how because I was saying it's actually a good thing that we don't get this huge leap every single device. Right.
I mean, how messed up would that be?
And this guy
actually that would harm the platform.
That would actually, it would really harm the platform. It would hurt the followers also. Well, they're Mac owners.
It would hurt everyone. It would hurt the hardware software makers. It would hurt the users. There's a reason they do this, and it's not just because they're
Well,
they're cheap. Whatever.
I pretty much said exactly what you said during the coverage. I said, well, it's a great thing that we have to remember it's not always this revolutionary thing. It's evolutionary at times, and it needs to evolve. And how mad would you be after buying this thing 8 months later, there's a whole new dramatic device that's out.
Right. Well, not to mention the fact that you can't really. I mean, Apple's good, but they're not that good. I mean, you can't be that revolutionary every single year anyway. A lot of times with a device like an iPad, which is essentially a new thing, you kind of throw it out there and you see what people like and what they don't like, and then they may talk it up, talk up the feedback loop or not, but they're looking at what people are doing with it and they're examining that and they're saying, okay.
But wouldn't you be mad? I mean, Paul, wouldn't you be mad? You buy this thing 6 months later, there's this crazy new radical design one. It's going to piss off the consumer if every year there's a new one that you kind of want.
Well, and you can combine that with the fact that Apple users, by and large, tend to be people who do upgrade as often as they can and are happy to throw money at Apple. So even something like this with an evolutionary update such as this, I know there are going to be a ton of people who, despite the fact that their iPad 2 is perfectly fine and will work perfectly fine going forward, there are no new apps coming that require this quad-core graphics processing.
Actually, you know what? How about that Infinite Blade game? Doesn't it require the quad-core processor or no?
Yeah, no, I mean like real apps.
Okay.
I mean, that like you're not going to buy an $800 iPad so you can play Infinity Blade 3 or whatever.
I guarantee. But you know what? There might be some people that might do that.
Okay.
And I wouldn't be surprised.
Somebody with good judgment wouldn't do that. But that's not how people buy these things. This is really an emotional decision, not a rational decision.
Yeah.
And my iPad 2 is pristine. It's in perfect quality. I have always protected it with a case front and back. It's beautiful looking. There's nothing wrong with it. I cannot wait to get rid of it. And this is the kind of, I think, mentality that a lot of people who love these products have. So
yeah, no, absolutely.
That will be part of it.
Listen, it's great. 4G is great. I think the more everybody's talking about the Retina, everybody's talking about the processor, but I think the story here is the battery technology that Apple is really using. Mm-hmm. It's actually caused a kind of this speed up with everybody else to try to catch up, because battery technology for many, many years has been awful, and the fact that they're able to get 9 to 10 hours, and that's what they're claiming. I don't know what I get on mine, to be honest. I don't really drain it that much. But in order to be getting 9 to 10 hours of battery life on a 4G device with a very high-resolution display and a pretty fast video graphics card, that's pretty impressive to me.
It's more than pretty impressive. It's fantastic. I mean, we'll see. I always take Apple's battery claims with a grain of salt, especially 4G. I mean, we have to see.
I mean, when you look at it, Paul, we were still using the nickel hydride batteries in many laptops up until a couple of years ago.
Yeah, I mean, as a frequent business traveler, one of the things I've always done is, in the past, and I don't do this anymore, and I'd have to think back to what machine I did this with last, but I always would bring an extra battery with me, right? Because I couldn't afford on a road trip not to have, that battery life. I needed it. Something like the iPad, you don't even think about it. We fly to Europe. You can use an iPad the entire flight and not worry about it.
Yeah.
It will last the entire time. It's not a problem.
So with the Apple news coming out this week, we're getting it, and the anticipated release of Windows 8 for a tablet, what does this mean for the desktop PC? What does this mean for the laptop? 10 years from now, and I know a lot of people are upset about Windows 8. They're saying it's a little too tablet-y. They like it, and I could understand them. I really do.
Oh, yeah.
I could even understand the people that say they don't want this iOS-ification of computing. They really don't want this. They want to be doing what they're doing now. But it's headed that way, and we are the minority. And in my opinion, the desktop computer will be something that enthusiasts use and hobbyists build, and you know what? Windows may not be the answer, and this is what I've been saying for a while. A lot of these people that are screaming that they want Windows to look like Windows, the current state, they'll be pretty happy with Linux.
I had I don't know why you keep bringing up Linux.
I keep telling you, Linux is the future of the desktop, Paul.
Mark
my word.
Every time you say that, my brain actually resets, and I have to sort of imagine what it is you're talking about, like Linux. Do they still make that?
But you know why I keep saying that? Because these are people that want a traditional operating system, and I think you could get that with Linux. I mean, people are complaining that you don't have system file access, and you want system file access, but the people who want that, they could be pretty happy with Linux.
I refuse to agree to that. I would say that those people would be better off getting Windows 8 and then employing every hack on earth to remove Metro boot to the desktop and do all that stupid stuff. I mean,
but listen, Paul, I'm going to do that. I guarantee you. And my dog is eating my headphones right now. Look at this thing. Get away, Spencer. I named my dog after my business partner, by the way.
Not after Spencer for Hire.
No. You know, what is that? Everybody says that to me.
What is Spencer for Hire?
Yeah, I don't know that reference.
It's a Robert Parker series of books that are actually pretty good. Robert Parker being a Boston area, crime and fiction writer. And also was a short-lived TV series starring the guy who was in Vegas. What was that guy's name?
Everybody says, they go, Spencer for Hire, and I have no idea what that means. And I go, yeah.
Yeah.
You just nod and smile.
It's famous.
Okay. I had no idea. We were talking about Linux. And then I was talking about...
we weren't. We were glossing over Linux.
No, we were discussing how you are a huge fan of Linux, and that is the future of the post-PC world, is Linux.
That's the crazy talk.
You could quote Paul on that, actually.
I used to make fun of, every year there used to be a series of articles that people would write where, insert year name is going to be the year of desktop Linux. This was the claim every year for 10 years.
Yeah.
They no longer make those claims. So
no, I don't.
That's not happening. The netbook was the last shining chance that
do you think
Linux had.
I'll tell you though, they have really their UI has really started to impress me. I mean, we're going for the last version of Linux that I used, and I'm talking I really used was probably like Red Hat 6.
Yeah. That
was the last time I installed it because I turned it on and I said I don't want to bother with this. And I went back to Windows the next day. But again, for people who are complaining about this and they're complaining that it's getting too simple, if they want something complicated, they could always go to that.
This is so crazy. I mean, there are examples of things that I am sort of passingly familiar with, like the automobile, right? Remember in the early days of the automobile, you had to be a mechanic because this thing required constant maintenance. You couldn't leave the house with this without feeling unsafe. It was going to require some amount of work. We're still in that phase with PCs, and that's the reason why these iPads and to a much lesser degree other tablets are taking off. PCs are too complex. And while there will always be people who prefer that kind of thing because they're tinkerers or hobbyists, the type of people who build ham radios and crazy Lego sets and little robots and whatever else they do, they're not the mainstream. They're not the majority. And I don't mean to say it like they don't matter, but from a marketing perspective.
No, as a business standpoint to Microsoft, they really don't.
They don't.
You know what they'll complain if Enterprise turns around and says, oh, we hate this, which some people will dislike it, but they'll grow to use it. That is the only way.
I don't think they will.
You don't think they'll dislike it?
No. And I can explain that. But I was going to say, the real thing that's going to save the desktop PC market from utter and immediate extinction is, in fact, the corporate market, the enterprise, because these are systems that those guys understand. And arguably their workers need to get real work done in applications that frankly are very friendly on a mouse and keyboard experience. And I just think that's going to be part of it. The reason we're having this discussion though is, as we've talked in the past, what makes a computer is changing. Smartphones are computers, tablets are computers. Our TVs have computers attached to them. The Apple TV is a computer. The Xbox is a computer. So when we think about general purpose computing devices, and we have to add in things like the phone and tablets and PCs, PCs are no longer the majority of that pie.
No.
And that's why Windows 8 is changing. And it's why, we call it personal computing, and the personal computer is this thing that is not very personal. Personal computers, really, truly personal computers, are the things that you kind of hold in your hand and touch and you bring into bed with you. And that sounds kind of crazy. I mean, it sounds crazy as I say it, but that's what people do. They lie in bed with an iPad or an iPhone or some other smartphone, and they keep up to date while they're reading a book maybe.
And that's exactly what I do. I mean, that's what I use my iPad for, and that's what most people use their devices for. I mean, yes, there are some power users out there, but most people, they send one email at a time. They send an email, and then they might go to YouTube, and then they might, look at cat pictures for 45 minutes. That is an average computer user.
Right.
They're not
and that saddens me slightly, but yes.
They're not running benchmarks.
Yeah.
you know, with their computer to get, and they're not overclocking. I mean, this is a bubble that the mainstream does not understand, and nor will they.
You know, overclocking and all that other stuff. You know, certainly as an enthusiast, I've engaged in these activities, but it reminds me of the people who buy a perfectly good new car and then put gold chrome all over it, and you know, big exhaust tips, and you know, they rip out the interior and they put on all this new stuff, and it's like, why would you spend all this money on something new and beautiful? And
I have a friend, he spent $30,000 on his Honda Civic, and I told him he could have went and got a Mercedes at that price.
Yes, I mean, but there you go. That guy doesn't represent the mainstream. Those people are absolutely out there. They love doing that. And, you know, for Honda with the Civic in particular, and some other cars that are like that, where they sell these stripper models knowing that that's what people are going to do to them, you know, it's a nice little market, but it's not mainstream. You know, it's not mainstream. That's the easiest way to say it. I'm sure many people listening to this have done what I've done, which is occasionally might go up to bed, lay down, and you have a laptop open, and it's not obvious. It's not fantastic, but you can do that. But it's far more natural to be reading a book or browsing the web or checking up on email or whatever it is you're doing on a tablet device. It just is.
The biggest issue for me for these, like for let's say my iPad, is the multitasking. Even though there's this half-assed way to do it now, it's not really multitasking. It's just running in the background and you get a message. I wish there was a easier way.
Yeah, I do too. Well, so the iPad has terrible user interface. I mean,
absolutely.
It's a weird thing to say.
And it's not
a lot
organic.
Of people would disagree with that
multitasking on iOS is not this organic feel to it. That's the biggest issue I have.
It's obviously lopped onto the side of it, but it's something I expect Apple to change over time. You know, this whole grid of icon thing is just hugely inefficient as it is. Now, I guess the only thing I'd sort of tack on to the end of that discussion, though, is that, and I bet there's a blog post out there that covers this exact thing. Microsoft will tell you the vast majority of people that use Windows do one thing at a time. You know, I mean, people are amazingly. Actually, you know, it's not fair to say inefficient. People do what they do. I mean, I happen to work in a certain way. I remember in the build up to Windows 7, one of the things that came out was that people would actually launch applications in a certain order on Windows so that the icons appeared in the taskbar in that order, because that's how they remembered where things were. I mean, that's the way people think, right?
Yeah.
So one of the cool features in Windows 7 is you can move those things around. Like you can actually change the position of icons, and everybody applauds to that without thinking like, this is like dumb that we even have to come to this point. But, you know, most of those people don't really care. They'll launch an application and they'll close it. Launch another application, they'll do whatever they got to do, and they close it. You know, so when we kind of complain about the multitasking issues on the iPad, I think to most people that's a non-issue. And
I mean,
and even
to most
by the
people,
way,
Paul, most people don't even know that they can move their files off their desktop.
Yeah, I know. Right. They have this one-to-one connection. You know, in other words, this comes up all in different ways. You know, people use Outlook and that's their email. So their email and their calendar and their contacts are stored in Outlook on a PC, and that's where that stuff is. That's dumb. This is like 2012 people. Like, this stuff can be out in the cloud and can be accessible from any device.
So in 10 years, do you think this is, let's play the game again. Let's play the 10 to 15 year mark. You know, this is the first huge leap to this tablet world. I mean, Windows is going into it, and Windows is going full steam. Their operating system is obviously for a tablet. It's for a touch device. I mean, yes, it does work well with the traditional laptop and desktop, but this is what it's kind of intended for, and they're saying this is where we're going. Where do you see it going in 10 years? I mean, are we going to have this weird docking system? Like, you know, we joke now that people take their tablet, they have a keyboard, and they dock their tablet, and they're doing all that stuff. But is that what's going to happen with computing?
That's the short term. I honestly, you know, if you kind of take a Star Trekian look at the future, and by Star Trekian, I sort of mean, you know, one of the things I always enjoyed about Next Generation was there's no concept of money, right? No one buys anything. No one pays for anything. I mean, people barter and stuff, but there's no money, right? I think you can look at computing in that way and say, right now we're very concerned about having personal devices. You know, we have to have it with us. Like it's a thing that we go to. We still go to these things, you know, just like Outlook is on one computer, you know, you have an iPad, you know. I think a more likely future, and this is a little longer term, but is that this stuff is just pervasive and anywhere, you know. Yeah. That you come over to my house and you sit on my couch and you interact with my TV as you, and you have access to your stuff on that TV. And when you leave, it leaves with you.
It leaves
you know,
with
that,
you, yeah.
that type of thing. You might sit on a bus or a plane and interact with a computer that's built into the seat rather than have to bring one with you. And you wouldn't bring one with you because that stuff is just available everywhere. And just by being you, you have access to your stuff all the time,
Sure.
no matter where you are. You know, that kind of thing.
No, I mean,
So-
and we're seeing that already. I mean, we're seeing that happen, and you know, the rumors are with the next version of the Xbox. I was going to say Xbox 360, but the next version of Xbox, they are saying that, well, every game is going to be recognized with your personal name, right?
Right. Yep. Yeah, I mean, all this stuff evolves. I mean, the Xbox is still in a place where you need a disc, right? That's really old-fashioned. There were video game consoles until fairly frequently that didn't really have any onboard storage at all, let alone a hard drive, which is also very old-fashioned.
But now they're saying, well, we might go back to that. No optical drive, maybe a little hard drive, and everything else on the cloud. I mean, it's actually interesting how we went from to a very small hard drive.
Bandwidth can make up for that. That's, you know, that's the pervasive availability just by you being you, and you'll have to log on. It's not that, you know, it's not that sentient yet, but you know, the Wii next gen version or the Xbox next gen version, PS4, whatever. You know, there'll be a lot of stuff just attached to your account, whatever it is, Microsoft ID, PlayStation Network account, whatever. You know, that's a step in that direction. You know, there's an ad on TV right now for the PlayStation Vita, right? Yeah. Where the guy is playing a game and then he has to go to work and he picks up the handheld and picks up in the game where he left off. A little bit of science fiction there, but it's a technical possibility with this system that you can integrate, that games can integrate between the two different devices.
Do you think there's going to be like this unified thing where, you know, you have this like ID number, this whatever ID you have, and you could take that ID with you and say, okay, you know what? I'm on a desktop now. I want to play my game on a desktop, and you take it and you can play it on the 360.
Yeah, I mean, they've already experimented with this.
Yeah, I mean, that's eventually where it's going to go because you have services like OnLive that are able to power it in the cloud.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing to remember is that, you know, an iPad, as great as it is, isn't great for everything. I mean, you know, for games that I like to play, for example, like with an Xbox 360 controller and all the different possibilities there, those game types are terrible on an iPad, and I've tried a bunch of them. They're never any good. It's just the way they are.
Yeah.
So there'll always be this kind of, I don't want to call it a side market or a niche market, but there'll always be the availability of choice, you know, the need for choice. And I think that that's one of those areas where the, you know, Windows 8 in particular, just speaking current generation, is going to be very important because you will have a choice of device sizes and types, you know, that it's not just a pure tablet. You know, you could have it be a tablet screen on a hybrid laptop. You could have it be a tablet that's a tablet when you're out in the world, but then you plug it into a dock and it becomes a full-fledged desktop computer.
I'm back, Paul. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
It's a total mess here. That the housekeeper is running the vacuum and doesn't understand me saying don't vacuum, and I keep saying don't vacuum, and she goes it's okay, and she just keeps vacuuming. I have a guy. I have a guy cutting tiles upstairs, and there's some guy banging on a hammer in front of the studio. So that's where
it's amazing. I don't have 13 kids in my yard whooping it up too. So
yeah, and then the dog ran away too. The dog almost ran out the door because they refused to close the door. The workers. So it's very fun trying to manage everything. Multitasking at its finest. If I was an iPad, I cannot do this.
You could. You would just do it poorly.
I would just do it really poorly. It would take me about 40 hours to
you know,
do this.
One of the common activities on an iPad, right, is you're reading an email and the email has a link to something and you click it, you tap on it, right? And it goes, and then the web browser loads.
Yeah.
Now you want to get back, right? I guarantee you that 99 out of 100 people just click the home button and then they look for that mail icon and they tap it and that's how they go back. But you know, you can double tap the mail icon and bring up that little multitasking list, and the mail icon will always be the first thing in that list.
But do you think that way of computing will be the way it is, or are we slowly re-evolving to know how to multitask on these devices?
No, honestly.
Or do you think it's not that much of a priority anymore? You don't need to have 1,000 things open on your desktop.
There are people who are like our parents' ages, right? Including my parents and my wife's parents, who are stuck with PCs. And by stuck, I mean they can't see past it. You know, they're curious about the iPad and those types of devices, but not enough to uproot everything they know and love to move to them. They kind of futz around with things on the PC. They like that there's these activities they can do, like they can defrag the hard drive, and they feel like they're improving performance. So they check for updates, and they, you know what I mean? They sort of, they're just used to it. It's a tradition. It's not something they actually need.
Well, I told you, I still run through, I defrag and I format every 6 months, and I do these weird things that I'm used to doing. I turn off services.
Yeah.
I turn off the fax.
Everything's changing. I mean, and not to get too far off into Windows 8 land, but, working on a Windows 8 book, one of the things I'm struck by is that Windows backup is this thing that has evolved over the years to become more and more powerful. And when you move forward to Windows 7, you can make this image-based backup that you can restore your PC from. It takes a little while, but it brings it back to exactly the way it was when you made the backup. It's a cool feature. If you add Windows Home Server into the mix, like 17 or 18 people have done, you can save these backups centrally on the server, and you could have them for multiple computers. It's all very exciting. In Windows 8, this feature doesn't even exist anymore. It's just gone. And I sort of investigated this, and what I found out was that you don't need it anymore. You don't need to back up your computer that way. That's dumb.
Yeah.
You can reset the computer and bring it back to a factory fresh state. You can reset the computer and bring it back to that same state, but with all of your documents and your music files and your settings and your apps and all that stuff. You have a feature called File History that will retain the contents of your libraries and your other data on a second drive.
Yeah.
I mean, that image-based backup, as cool as that was, as amazing and neat, kind of like Time Machine is in Windows in Mac OS 10. Windows has had this thing for a long time. People don't really realize that. Apple does a cute job of making the UI, but they've completely obsoleted it in Windows 8. You don't need it anymore. It's just not necessary. So this big complicated process, it's not really complicated, but kind of a big heavy process in Windows 7 isn't just made easier in Windows 8. It's just gone. You don't need it. And it's that kind of thing.
I mean, the Metro UI, yes, it's still, it's still very early, and we'll see what's going to happen with it over the next couple of years and how it's going to evolve. But somebody was telling me, well, how about for a power user? How about for a company that only uses one piece of software? You really don't care for the Metro UI. You want to go and that's something. I said, well, it's a total opposite, actually. If you're only using one piece of software, the Metro UI, you might be able to benefit off of that because all you do is start that program and that's it. You don't have to play with everything else. You might actually benefit from that Metro UI and that one piece of software that you're running.
Yeah, actually, and that ties into the comment I made earlier about businesses. There are two aspects to Windows 8 that I think are really going to excite businesses, and these are general areas of interest, not specific features like Windows to go or whatever. And one of them is what you just said, which is the ability for them to define what that Metro start screen looks like for their employees and say, hey, look, you only need access to 5 applications. Here are the tiles in the start screen. You don't have anything else. It's locked down. Now all you can do is work. People are going to like that. People meaning company. Like
sure.
They're really going to like
it. Now, I don't want to really dwell on Windows, but I read, and I'm not going to say where it was, but I read that there might be the option for enterprise to shut off Metro.
Yeah, well, okay, so it's a little more complex, maybe nuanced is the correct word than that. Metro, such as it is, Metro is a kind of a nebulous term, but we'll just call it Metro. Metro is Windows 8. It's the operating system. It's not, you can't get rid of it. I mean, even if you have decided that you are going to exist solely in the desktop, or because you're using a desktop computer, you literally are just going to be using the desktop. That's the way it is. You're using those apps, whatever. There's all this stuff that intrudes onto that from Metro, right? A lot of system level things. Notifications. You plug in a USB drive, for example. The thing that comes up, it's a Metro UI. It's overlaid on top of the desktop. The desktop is conceptually like this app. The switcher interface for switching between apps, the back interface, the start experience, the charms, all of the edge UIs you can have are all Metro stuff. You can't get rid of them, right? The question is whether businesses are going to, or whether Microsoft is going to allow businesses to allow their employees to skip the start screen and go right to the desktop.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's what the article meant, that they could go directly into desktop rather than going into Metro first.
Yeah, so You can do that right now if you want to do that. That is actually a capability that's in Windows 8.
Okay.
That's possible.
And then you could download some stupid add-on and add your start menu too.
Yeah, I don't want to get off into like stupid land, but yeah, you could.
You can.
You can do dumb things too. But
so, do you think the tablet is the future of the computer? I mean, do you see everything going to this tablet world? I mean, and I'm not just saying a screen. I'm saying maybe something that's dockable. I know Acer has been trying to do it for a while, or Asus. I forget which one, the Transformer.
This is going to be really hard to measure, but the way I would say it is this. If you look at computers today, traditional computers, desktops and laptops, something like 70% of all computers today sold are laptops. So we're already heading in that sort of mobile mode, right? And laptops have terrible ways, but ways in which you can dock them and use another screen and a keyboard and all that stuff. And people do that. So not many, but some people do that. Tablets today, a very tiny percentage of all PCs sold. For example, Apple sold 15 million iPads in the last quarter, which was amazing. But PC makers sold, I don't remember the number, 125 million, whatever, computers. So it's not, it's not a big percentage of the whole thing yet. I do think that's going to change. And I think when you look down at the future, maybe 5 years from now, you think about general purpose computing devices. You don't put phones into this because I don't think many people are going to be replacing computers with phones because the screens are so small. Although, again, you have that weird hybrid device possibility, and that's why for the upteenth time it gets messy. But I do think that tablets are going to invade into this space, and that when you put those things together, that tablet computers will outsell laptops and desktops combined. That the percentage of laptops to desktops will remain consistent, but the percentage of tablets to laptops and desktops could remain kind of what laptops are now. Maybe that will be 70%, but it will be above 50, certainly. Yeah, definitely.
And how long do you think that's going to take? I mean, eventually.
That's the trick. So Microsoft obviously thinks it's going to happen fast. A lot of people think that Microsoft moves very slowly, and even I have complained many, many times about how, guys, come on, you got to, what are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing? But once you find out, I should say, what really happened at Microsoft and how they arrived at Windows 8, you find out that this happened pretty quick, that the decision to go all touch and go after this market happened before the iPad was released, the first one. It was absolutely a response to the iPad. I mean, don't get me wrong on that, but they made this decision before Apple even shipped the thing, that this was it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the other option would have been a separate operating system, and the odds would have been people would have picked it up, and it would say, "Well, I don't want this." I mean, we've seen people don't want.
By the way, not odds. I can guarantee you that's what
it would have been. But
I talked to someone at Microsoft about this.
What would have been the other option? What would have been
so at Microsoft there was in fact a group of people who argued to Steven Sinofsky and others that Microsoft needed to keep Windows as it was and evolve it, and that the operating system for tablets that they should make should be based on Windows Phone.
Okay.
Because this thing was sort of like what the Apple did with the iPad. It was take a phone OS and move it up to a tablet. Same debate that we've had out here in the real world, in the years since. They had this debate, 2.5, 3 years ago. You know what happened, so it doesn't really matter what those people thought. Those guys left the team. They're off. They're done. They're working on other things, but they're still very upset about it. And I had a conversation with a couple of guys from Microsoft, and I've heard this from different people. Mary Jo Foley has a story like this as well from someone else, where they basically say, look, it's a little messed up. We need Windows to succeed because that's Microsoft's future.
Yeah.
But we also need Steven Sinofsky to fail because we need Windows to get back on track and go back to what it was before. Both of those things can't happen. So the stuff that I've done online where I sort of railed against people who were trying to, I want to move where shutdown is, or I want the start button back. The point behind that is it is the way it is. This is what's happening. You can't change it. I'm sorry. Windows 8 will fail or succeed, but I give them some credit for moving very quickly in whatever direction they've gone in, the direction they have gone in. And frankly, for doing something that is at least innovative and different and new and is pretty. I mean, they've done a nice job with the
no, I mean, it's a great looking operating system. I mean, it's a beautiful operating system, but is this their future? Is this the future of this device? 10 years from now, Windows looked like Windows for many, many years. Yeah. That was the look. Is this the next look for Windows? I mean, 10 years from now, are we going to still be looking at something like this?
Yeah, this Metro look, these fonts, these tiles and stuff. This is going to mark an era that, you can look back at old Microsoft products and say, I remember that. That's from 1995. You can just tell by looking at it, The Metro stuff is going to be like that. It's going to mark this era. This will evolve. But I can tell you this, that I believe, at least in my opinion, is that when you look at Windows and how it's used, if this thing is as successful as they want it to be, most people will be using Windows on a device and will be using Metro only, not the desktop.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that stuff doesn't sell, that it doesn't continue, that they don't keep evolving it. It just means that as a percentage of the total, more people will be using Metro.
Yeah.
By the way, if that's not the case, Windows is doomed. It's over.
You think if this doesn't work for them and they don't stick to this, it's the beginning of the end.
It's over because too many people have discovered that they can move on. One of the big sort of myths, that people have in their own heads about things is that, like I talked about our parents, and my father is like this stuff. My wife's dad is like this. They're kind of stuck on these PCs. They can't wrap their mind around anything else. Even though I know that they could get along with an iPad just fine. Those people are going to die eventually. I mean, that's not much of a market. Most people move along and they look at an iPad and they realize, actually, this works for me.
Yeah.
Microsoft needs to be part of that. They need the thing that people say this works for me to be Windows 8, and to
it has to work. I mean, at this point. But you know what? This is a good time to talk about our advertiser of What the Tech, and that's Hover.com. Domain names made simple. I am a big fan of Hover. I buy a bunch of domains all the time. I have almost 200 domains. I've said it a bunch of times, and people don't believe me, but I do. I have almost 200 domains, and they're all with Hover. And I've transferred everything that I had with those other guys to Hover because their UI is extremely clean. They don't try to upsell you. They don't do scare tactics for you to do private registration because it's included already. They're not charging you $11 for that. They don't do certified and business registration. It's all the same. If you're buying a domain name, you buy the domain, you do private registration, and you're done. And you're finished. You could buy linsupersite.com for Linux, Paul.
That's crazy.
You could have a Linux version of your site.
There probably is a linsupersite.com.
I would love to see if there is, actually. Let me see this. Linsupersite.com. You know what? Somebody owns it, and they bought it at Hover.
See, I would.
That is so funny.
The tagline for that site would be, "Next year will always be the year of desktop Linux."
You know what? Probably one of our viewers just bought it because it's at hover.com. It just redirects me to Hover. That's hysterical. Oh, man. I guess somebody just bought that website. But you know what? You could get it for 10% off if you want to buy a domain name. If you use promo code WTT upon checkout, or just go to gfq.hover.com. Go there right now. It'll cash it in there or whatever it does. And they'll remember you next time you go to buy a domain name. They've been with us for some time, and I'm a big fan of theirs, and I support everything that Hover does because they don't kill elephants like those other guys. Hover.com, domain names made simple. Go to gfq.hover.com and get 10% off your entire purchase. That is actually in my copy, by the way. They don't kill elephants like those other guys. Yeah, but you're right. We are in this weird transition period, right? Because we have our phone, and the phone is the phone, and then we have the tablet, and that's separate, and then we have our desktop, which is totally separate from all of them. So at what point do you think everything is going to officially merge? I mean, I know we're seeing it now, and we're seeing the transition begin, but do you think in another 2 years, do you feel that with the next major release of Windows and the Mac OS, complex,
right? So it's not that simple. The issue is that, for example, I think it was Gartner just said, we expect PC sales to jump by something like 10% next year, to like traditional PC sales, because of Windows 8, right? So sales of PCs could remain constant in the roughly 350 to 360 million units per year category or area, or they could even go up, like they might go up next year. What's going to change is that more and more people are going to be buying these devices. People have already, last year, I think more smartphones, actual smartphones, not just phones, but smartphones, were sold than PCs. X number of years from now, more tablets will be sold. I mean, I think that's inevitable. It is something that accelerates. It took a long time for phones to catch up. It's going to take a lot less time, I think, for tablets to catch up. The fact that Microsoft was worried about this in the beginning of 2010, which was over 2 years ago, suggests that they knew this was going to happen.
Where do you think this leaves everybody else? Because Windows has taken that leap. The next version of Apple's, desktop operating system is kind of saying, not this version. I don't think this version is going to be that big leap, but whatever follows, whatever is coming out next over the summer, that'll probably be the big leap. But do they merge iOS, considering how successful it's been for them? I don't know if that's necessarily the right.
I think they could, but maybe the way to think of this is it almost doesn't matter, right?
Yeah.
10 years ago, these things still exist, but we used to have this concept of workstations, right? Workstations were sort of these nebulous high-end PCs, but now that regular PCs have multiple cores and can have terabytes of terabytes of storage and multiple gigabytes of RAM and so forth, giant screens, the line has blurred between what we think of as a desktop PC and a workstation. But, in this world of the future, maybe these tablet-type devices are mainstream computers, what we now think of as PCs, personal computers. And the computers that we use now with keyboards and mice and big boxes and lots of storage, those are like workstations.
Yeah.
It's still a market. It's still a viable market. I'm sure Dell and HP and all those guys can make money making these things. But they're going to make more making tablets if if Windows 8 takes off. It's with the the car and the truck thing is a good analogy, other than the fact that 10 years ago gas was so cheap that trucks were outselling cars. So it kind of blows away the analogy. But if you think about the audience size for people who need trucks, who really need trucks to get work done, and then the audience size for cars, people who just need transportation, that can fit 2 or more people, a family perhaps. The audience for cars is much bigger than the audience for trucks.
But, they didn't need to learn how to drive a car. I think too many people, they got to relearn how to do their daily
okay, I know. Again,
tasks.
Without beating to death,
Yeah.
The truck has a stick shift in it.
Okay.
The car is an automatic. The car has air conditioning. The truck has windows. Literally has windows. And as with all analogies, it can break down. Everyone can throw a little wrench in the story. We're just trying to make a comparison so that it makes sense to people, but it doesn't have to be an exact one-to-one representation of the market. But I think that the market for these general-purpose, simpler, highly portable computing devices ultimately, yes, will be bigger than the market for what we now think of as PCs. That PCs that, like I said, are not.
No, it's going to be the enthusiast box. It's going to be something that you kind of have to get if you're doing heavy duty video editing. And you know what? Actually, for that too, you might not need to get it.
I know.
That's a crazy thing, right? You don't need this giant box in your office in order to do video editing anymore. They're putting quad-core video graphics on these things. They're doing quad-core CPUs. This is in the next year or two, we'll see a quad-core CPU in an iPad.
Sure.
These are fast machines. If you look at where the Xbox was, the Xbox 360 was, I think the iPad is faster than the Xbox 360, right? Hardware-wise.
That could be. Faster is kind of a tough term.
Not faster, but it's higher specs, I think.
Sure.
And that's mind blowing if you think about it. And this thing has no heat either. It's a weird transition period we're in. Yep. And regardless if you like Apple or not, this device kind of elevated the tablet market and kind of created what it is now, because it does not exist outside of the iPad at this point. I think Windows 8 will eventually become the dominant force because it's going to be this familiar thing, right? Most people know how to use Windows. Most people, and if I have a Windows computer and I'm going to buy a tablet, I'm interested in a tablet, I'll probably stick with Windows.
So I'm writing an article right now that has a title something like, it's like a competitive report about the iPad and the new iPad and how it compares to Windows 8. There are some areas where the iPad really comes on strong, But there are some areas where Windows does beat the iPad. And aside from the obvious things like choice, and the ability to run desktop applications and that dock mode where you can, do the full-blown experience if you want. You don't need 2 different machines like you do with a Mac and an iPad. Aside from the business stuff where you can, they can create group policies that really lock down these machines exactly the way they want. There are these little things, that I and I think others really do enjoy about a Windows computer that really kind of put it over the top. The iPad is like this weird self-contained thing. It's neat that they've opened it up to all these online services so you can get all your movies and TV shows and stuff. But that sort of presumes that you have bought everything you ever wanted to own from Apple only. Like this capability is not available from anyone else.
Also, it's the apps too, Paul. I mean, the market, the App Store plays a huge part in why people buy this device.
Well, right, but the the App Store is a kind of a lock-in thing, much like these people's traditions about Windows computers is kind of a lock-in thing.
Yeah.
Like they get used to this. This is what they know, so now they don't want to move on anymore. But I liked having I bring the Windows 8 tablet with me when I travel. I had some TV shows or movies on there or whatever, and I was watching a series of documentaries, and I arrived at the end. And on the plane, all I had to do was plug in a USB memory device that had the other shows, copy them out of the thing, or I could just play them right off the device if I wanted to. And I had them, something that you cannot do with an iPad. It's a little thing. It's not the only thing, but it's just like there is like a very limited thing, that all Apple products do, this little bucket of functionality. Whatever's in there, Apple does it awesome. It's awesome.
Yeah, that's the thing. It does.
But once you want to get out of that little box, you can't do it typicbut
And that's why most people don't.
Yeah. So you take an iPad on a plane, the battery is going to last the whole time. There's no doubt about it. But if you didn't put the song on there that you wanted, or the video you wanted to watch, or the book you wanted to read, sorry, unless you want to do unless you happen to have your laptop with you, and you can do the cable sync and all that kind of stuff. And I guess you could do that, but that you've kind of obviated the benefit of only traveling with an iPad at that point, haven't you? So I mean that's the one thing that not the one thing. It's one thing that I've run into that I think is cool, just as a person, like just as an individual. There's no reason that a Windows 8 tablet can't do everything that an iPad does, including, by the way, running iTunes and all that stuff. If you wanted to just rent movies from Apple, they would work just fine on a Windows 8 tablet, of course.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean it's a lock-in to win. I mean, I really don't think Windows 8 is going to win. I think that the future is going to be a lot more heterogeneous, that there are going to be some number of solutions out there, all of which are viable. And it's not going to be like Windows versus the Mac 10 years ago. It's just not going to be
so now with, the evolution of what the computer is and how it's going here, one thing that really hasn't caught up, and that's mobile internet access.
Yeah.
We're still, I mean, as the speeds are getting bigger, the more restricted the services are getting with the caps and the throttling and strange things like that are going on. Do you think that they're going to catch up eventually and say, you know what, this is crazy? We have two strange futures, and they're totally different. One is the world where we talk about how nothing was capped, and do you remember when you could download whatever you wanted? And the other one is, can you believe they capped us?
I don't honestly think it's going to matter, the capping. I really don't. I'm surprised it ever happened, to be honest. But listen, I've done things like I was walking down a boulevard in Barcelona a month ago and checking my email on my phone, for which I had purchased international data. Somebody made a comment to my blog, which I have to personally okay before it gets posted to the public part of the blog, which I did from the phone, and then you move on to the next email, and then you're done checking email and you have some family time and you do whatever you do. I mean, we live in a world that is fairly wonderful for this kind of stuff. I mean, I know that in certain places people have very low speed connections and, they pay a lot of money for access and all that stuff. I get it. But that's not the way the world's going. It's not going in that direction. It's going in the other direction.
No, the speed connection, the speeds are obviously they're going to grow and they're going to get faster. But when you're looking at a 5 gig cap on a 4G device, a device that's giving you 20 megabits a second, theoretically, I mean, that's what I get here. It'll be very easy to burn through that 5 gig cap on this device.
Just today, I got an email from AT&T trying to sell me a 4G LTE MiFi type hotspot thing. So I looked into it, right? It's normally $270 to buy the thing. It's $60 on a special, but then it's $50 a month for 2 years to get 5 gigs of access, right? If you can get if LTE is there, you can have that. If it's not, use HSPA or whatever it's called. I assume it goes down to 3G. I have no idea. But they have a little calculator there, and they say, well, you can move the sliders. How much do you do every day, right? And if I'm not mistaken, it said, they didn't go up to 60 minutes for some reason, but 50 minutes of video every single day for a month was about 3 gigabytes, right? So about 2/3 of the available bandwidth. You know, who plays an hour of video every single day for 30 days straight on a mobile device? You know.
Well, I'm trying to let me think. Yeah, yeah.
Well, I'm
who
just
does
saying
that?
that's pretty good. I mean, in other words, and by the way, this device, of course, lets you split it out to up to 5 devices. You know, so I was thinking about it, but then it occurred to me, you know, I'm getting a new iPad. Hopefully, AT&T will allow this device to work as a hotspot, because then I could just buy that same amount of storage for the same monthly price, but only when I actually need it, not pay for it every single month. You know, this is a very exciting thing, I think. I mean, I think the ability just to turn that on and off as you want it alone is an incredible feature.
But where do you think it's gonna? I'm trying to not say the person's name that sent me the email, but I got an email from someone. They said they just got 4G. They're in New York, and they keep hitting their cap every month. And I asked them, what do they do?
On
and they
4G.
said on 4G. And
Really?
I asked them what they do, and they said pretty much everything. They're no longer using their
okay.
their
So you
computer.
replaced a home connection. That's something, you know, that's interesting, by the way, and that's something that I think more and more people are going to be doing too. I don't know how, are they on AT&T or Verizon?
Verizon.
So yeah, Verizon I'm not as sure about, and I would never trust AT&T with home access, but you know, again, depending on where you are, for a lot of people that might actually make sense, right? So that 5 gigs of bandwidth on AT&T is $50. I don't know what they're paying on AT&T. I'm sorry, on Verizon, but that's a lot less than I'm paying FiOS. I can tell you that.
What are you paying for FiOS now?
Well, I don't know because it's all bundled.
It's
together.
all bundled. I actually know the pricing. Right now,
I believe I give them $2,000 a month.
Yeah, that's what I'm giving too at this point.
Yeah.
No,
It's like a house payment.
I'm paying I think $64 for 25.25, and the other one, which is 50/50, it's bundled in, and I'm paying like $78.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not bad, but
is there any way, can you go to a site and see how much you used? I mean, I've never done that.
How much bandwidth I use? You know, the national average is 20 gigs a month.
On a cable type connection.
On a at-home connection. 20, I think it's a little over 20 gigs.
Okay.
And that kind of makes sense if you're watching Netflix and you're watching Hulu and you go to YouTube all the time. That kind of makes sense to me that you might burn through 20 gigs.
Yeah, and it might be skewed on FiOS because FiOS on demand is all over IP, so that would use up your bandwidth.
See, I don't know what FiOS is, and that's why they can't cap you on FiOS because they're using your bandwidth.
Because they're using IP.
Yeah. But it's weird. Like the bandwidth doesn't get throttled because it's IP. Mm-hmm. It's a separate bandwidth for that. But if you look on your router. Your monthly downloads, it does add your video on demand service.
So wait, can you look and see what it is?
I think so. Yeah, it's in there.
It's in the router.
In the crappy router. Yeah.
I got to look at this because I don't know. I mean,
by the way,
I've often wondered about these.
Paul, just put in 192.168.
See if I can. Of course, the problem is I log into this thing like once a year.
And by the way, it might kick you off the internet once you log in.
Oh, good. So maybe I'll.
Yeah, we'll see what happens with that.
I'll tell you what. I won't do that right now. But I'll.
I haven't checked mine, but I burned through. I mean, let's calculate mine. If all I do is streaming, right? Mm-hmm. I am streaming on one connection. I'm streaming 4 megabits a second every day, all day, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. 4 megs a second I'm using.
Somewhere there's a red button on a dashboard that is there just for you.
Just for me. I guarantee there is somebody that's looking at this and saying, what the hell are they doing?
Who is this clown?
Yeah, well, 4 gigs. 4 gigs a second I'm streaming. And the other one I'm streaming 2.5 every second. So I'm doing about 6.5, 7 megabits a second all day, every day throughout the entire year.
Are you using the consumer version of FiOS? I'm surprised I don't have a licensing thing against that.
No. I'm using at home.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, that was an interesting conversation I had to have with them to let me do this. But there's nothing in their terms of service that says that I can't.
Okay.
I'm just streaming. I'm not doing anything illegal. I'm not streaming. I'm not running an FTP. I'm not running BitTorrent. I'm streaming to Ustream, Justin TV, Stickam, whatever, all the streaming sites. So anybody could do that. Every 14-year-old kid is doing it. I'm just doing it excessively. I'm a bad 14-year-old kid that does things excessively. But I'm assuming that most people cannot even do that if they wanted to. I mean, if you were to do that with something like Comcast, which you are capped at 50 gigs. I'll see you guys. See you tomorrow. My guys just left.
Comcast, you are capped at 50 gigs.
50 gigs, you are. So you'd be screwed in a way. By the way, someone says, last month I was on Sprint. I used 50 gigs of data.
On Sprint?
With 4G. Yeah, it's truly unlimited.
How much is that? Oh, it's free. Jesus, can you
it's
imagine
truly unlimited.
The bill on like Verizon or AT&T for that kind of usage?
Well, someone in the chat room says Time Warner has no caps. That's not necessarily true because I know people that have gotten letters from Time Warner saying that they have used an excessive amount. And if they continue to do that, it is against their terms of service because in their terms of service they said they could cancel at any time for anything.
Nice.
They actually, what they do, and it's kind of crappy, they shut off your TV as well, and they put a message saying, please call us on your TV.
Well, that's one way to get your attention.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm having a problem. No, this is off topic, but I'm having a problem with Fios with the deleting shows from my DVR now.
Oh, yeah, with the update. Yeah. They delete them really fast.
Yep.
I've been, you know what I've been watching? Prophets of Sci-Fi. It's on the History Channel. Or it's on like the Science Discovery Channel, and it's about sci-fi authors and how they predicted stuff.
Yeah,
it's actually a really, really cool, I guess, documentary or series that they have.
Sure.
And the problem that I have is that my wife is always recording like Gossip Girl during the show, so I have to catch the 3 o'clock replay.
Yes.
And because my DVR fills so fast, I have like 6 days to watch it, or else it's gone.
All right. So actually, the deletions that have occurred to me recently, like the past couple of days, have actually been when the DVR was not full.
Huh. Someone's going in there. What show is it?
Well, no. So there's a new feature of the software where you can see the deleted stuff. It's not in the deleted list.
Oh, it's just disappearing.
Yeah. So there was a documentary, and then I usually watch. My wife and I watch The Walking Dead, and she decided, she's like, I'll just go ahead and watch it. I don't care. And then I watched it. And I said, actually, this was kind of a monumental episode. You're going to want to see this one.
Yeah,
and,
I'm not going to spoil
to watch it again. And
I'm not going to spoil it for anybody, but I called my wife and I told her what happened.
Well, that last episode, basically, I've been waiting this entire season for this little thing to come out and happen because it's been like a slow boil to this, and it was getting kind of monotonous. So I was excited they finally had it out in that way. But anyway, yeah, it was a big episode. So.
Let me see here. Yeah, it's called Prophets of Sci-Fi. Someone asked me. I think it was Isaac Asimov. That was the episode that I missed.
Oh yeah, no, I've read a lot of his stuff. So he has the Foundation books where the guys have the little, personal computers they carry around with them and all that stuff. He's a good one, and Arthur C. Clarke and Ray Bradbury, all those guys absolutely have invented.
Heinlein. I mean, Heinlein was another one.
Yep.
I think
he invented all kinds of things.
Yeah, yeah. I think something with like the scuba or something with the scuba.
Yeah. But you could even go back to Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea was wow, I'm losing it. 18th century.
Wait, I read something from Heinlein over the summer. God, now I forgot the name.
See, I lose it here, and then I don't look it up. Let me just look it up.
Heinlein looked like he was
H.G. Wells, for example.
By the way, Heinlein looked like he was from the future in his later years.
Yes. Yep.
He looked like he was going somewhere. It wasn't Red Planet that I read. God, what did I read by him? Something, the girls, something. Come on. Someone in the room. Just throw that out there. Not Starship Troopers. I know he wrote that, but I guess, I don't know how we got to this, but I guess we were talking about the cable companies. and we ended up talking about Robert
TV
Heinlein.
shows, yeah. We got science fiction.
But
it's a logical progression.
Do you think they're going to end the caps? I mean, eventually with 4G growing as much as it is and people starting to use it as their internet access, are we going to start seeing... What I could start seeing, which I think is a backwards way of doing, is that if you have 4G at home, you're not going to get capped. But if you have 4G mobile, you're going to get capped.
There'll always be this thing where I think the biggest users are going to have, the oppressive hand of Big Brother hanging over them, as they should. I'm actually kind of surprised, given some of the stuff I do. I haven't gotten that kind of flashing message on the TV yet. But I don't know. I was telling these guys last weekend back, when I first moved back to Boston, I had this local service called RCN, and it was really, really primitive. And I kept getting bumped offline. And so finally I called him up and I said, hey, I'm online for a minute. I get offline. We went through all this stuff. And the guy said, you don't have a DNS server running in your house, do you? And I said, No, I don't, but I think I found the problem. Thanks. And it was like I was like testing Windows 2000 server, like the beta version or something, and was in fact providing my single IP address to whoever hit the network next every time someone came online. Yeah, it's stupid. So
yeah, I don't know. I think the evolution of that is that it's going to be they're always going to want to kind of restrict it in some way, which I don't think they should, because bits really they don't cost anything.
These
it's
companies
not this commodity.
They're pipes, and they're what we use to do the things we want to use. What they want to be is the content suppliers. So they want to be providing us with entertainment, but they don't want to be giving us what is essentially free bandwidth so we can go do other stuff. And I think they're in kind of a tough spot. So maybe the future of this stuff is partnerships between these companies like AT&T and Verizon and so forth, and the big content providers online, Google and Facebook and whatever, and there's certainly been talks in those direction. Where,
well, they were just talking about. I think we spoke about it last week. How when LG had a Netflix phone, it was the first official Android Netflix phone. Well, what if they turn around and say, "Well, we're not gonna throttle. You're not gonna cap anything you watch on Netflix on this phone."
Right.
Well, I can see that happening.
The implications of you're paying a company for phone, internet, and TV. But you want to use an internet phone service, whatever it is. So you call them up and you say, hey, I'm not going to pay for phone anymore, but you don't tell them this, but I'll be using your internet now for the phone.
Yeah.
Because it's like free. It's like I'm not paying extra for it. That's kind of a bad business model for them. So you could sort of understand why they would want to prevent that, right? I mean, even though I think we all agree they shouldn't have a technical means to make that happen, it's at least understandable why you were paying them for this, but now you're not paying them, but you're still getting the service technically through them, right? You can see where this would be a problem. So I just think we're early on. These are the issues that need to be resolved, and they will be over time. My phone usage, which I can look up easily, is never that great for whatever reason. Of course, I don't leave the house a lot. Maybe that's the reason. But I would bet that my usage here at home is fairly dramatic, right? Because of all the stuff I do.
What do you think you hit? I'm sure you're probably going over 100, right?
It's gotta be crazy. I mean, I back up to the cloud from my home servers. That couple of months I did that alone must have been insane.
And things like that. I think these companies have to start realizing, like Comcast caps you at 50 gigs, or they start throttling you in some sense. They're supposed to, at least from what they claim. But if let's say you have like a Carbonite account, or you have whatever, and you start backing up your stuff, you could hit that in 2-3 days. Then what do you do?
Right.
I mean, then you got to call them and say, well, that's a bizarre conversation to have. Well, I'm backing up my stuff to the cloud. I wasn't downloading anything, and they're going to turn around and say, well, we're sorry, you're capped.
Yep. What about that awful circumstance where you actually have to go back to Carbonite and get your stuff out of it?
Yeah. Now you got to download.
That would probably be a bigger problem, actually, downloading. And you can picture that happening. And then you get into a conversation where you're like, look, I really need to get that stuff. That's why I'm doing this. You could see that.
It's almost like bandwidth speeds really got, they kind of evolved for many people. And majority, listen, there's a lot of parts of the country that's still stuck with,
in the world,
but let's say people with high speed internet, the speeds increase, but the Mentality didn't, because also file sizes are a lot larger too now. I mean, it's not but 10 years ago when you would have to download a 2 gig file, you would be staring at the screen saying, wow, this is going to take a while. Now you could download a 2 gig file within a couple minutes.
In a couple seconds.
Seconds. Yeah, I mean, you're getting 50 megabits a second. I mean, a minute or two, you've downloaded the thing.
Sure.
And that's why files are getting bigger. So when you're saying, well, yeah, you get the speed, but you're not going to be able to download everything you want, it's kind of defeating the purpose, right?
Yep. Yeah. But again, I think it will improve. I mean, there'll come a time when, internet connectivity will be pervasively wireless. It will be some future LTE type thing. Remember the Apple demonstration they did for the iPad? They were talking about all the different networking types, right? It does 3G, which is whatever speed. It does HSPA, which is whatever speed, 21 megabits or something. LTE, technically, I think they said could go up to 73, which is like, that's really good.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
if it ever worked, you know,
With
and that's the
LTE.
thing. But someday it will.
No, listen, I'm getting mid-20s now in New York.
Yeah.
And when I got
that's
it,
a very crowded place.
yeah, and when I got it, they were telling me 7 to 12. They're like, well, you'll probably get 7 to 12 at most. And I went home and I thought I was on Wi-Fi.
Yep.
And I thought there might be something wrong with the phone, and I went a couple blocks up, and I'm still getting that speed.
You know, right now they're paying to roll that stuff out. It's very expensive, you know, but eventually that will be paid for as more and more people come online. They improve the technology and so forth, and then maybe it will be more feasible for more people to say, look, I could just use this as my connection.
And also, the infrastructure for LTE is intended to last a while.
Yeah. Yep.
It's not like 3G. It's not, well, they went from 2G to 2.5 to 3, but 3G's been around since 2003, I think.
Really?
You know, some phones had 3G.
Right.
They were crappy flip phones, but they had 3G.
Yeah, but they were probably barely doing it. What could one of those phones possibly do? I need to get the weather, you know, so it comes back up in a second. But
yeah, and it was 3G, and they were selling it that way. I had a flip phone. I think it was it was a Nextel actually, and had 3G.
Yeah.
And I was so excited I could get my stocks, blazing speeds.
I could find out how much I was
Yeah. But
quickly.
LTE's here to stay for a while, so yeah, you're right. Once they start rolling it out and they stop kind of deploying as much, they're going to start seeing more profits, and they're going to be happy with that.
And you can see how that parallels what's going on in computing as well, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we talked about how people have this one computer that has Outlook on it, and that's their stuff. And the better way to do that is to have it up in the cloud, and then you have it wherever you want. Same thing with connectivity. I mean, connectivity could literally follow you around. You have this account at Verizon. You're at home doing stuff at home with it, but you go on a plane and get off in California, and you're using it there. You're still using your bandwidth, if you will. It's all the same, you know. It's different from the way things are now because most people have this home connection, and then they have this kind of connections that are associated with their devices. But what if it was all, you know, the same account? They could have family plans and all that stuff.
Yeah.
I think it will head in that way. And then, you know, we all race to have new construction where they have, wired internet access inside the house and everything. And we'll, you know, a couple of years down the road, we'll be like, why did anyone even do that?
Yeah. Paul, it is time to wrap it up. It's already. It's 5:13. I know you got to go. You're a busy man. I'm going to go stare at the wall and pull my hair out of my head because of what I had to deal with today. Everybody could go to our website, guysfromqueens.com or gfqnetwork.com. If you miss any portion of the show, you could go and download it. It should be up within the day. Check out Paul's site, winsupersite.com, for all things Paul Thurrott and Microsoft. Let's see what's on WinSuperSite today.
Later this week, I'm going to write an article about why Apple has nothing to worry about with Windows 8, but that may surprise some people.
I actually want to see that. Today, you have Hotmail tips for organizing email. That is your latest post. And you have 5 stars.
5 stars.
Looking at your rating. I guess people like it. So we go to winsupersite.com. Also check out Paul every Thursday on the Twit Network for Windows Weekly with Leah Laporte and Mary Jo Foley as they discuss everything Windows. And that's it, right, Paul? And you have an app. You have an iPhone app, and you have a
I do.
yeah,
I do.
which I have. And we're on, too. We're on the Paul Thurrott app. If you put in, I think, Paul Thurrott in your iOS device, and I think it's on Windows Mobile. Windows Phone.
Yikes.
Whoa.
Yikes.
Not Windows Mobile.
It's a punishable offense in these parts.
Listen, it should be on Windows Mobile. I think we should go back. We should all go back to Windows Mobile. Not even Windows Mobile. Not 6.5, 6.
The one thing I will never express is something along the lines of, God, I miss Windows Mobile. Never going to happen.
You know what? I do. I'll say it for you. We'll see you all next week on What the Tech. Good night, everybody.